Hey guys, how's it going? So I'm doing my fight breakdown for the card on February 5th, this Saturday coming up. It's the UFC Fight Night Jack Hermanson versus Sean Strickland fight. So I'm going to start right with the prelims right away. So the very first fight of the night is the flyweights at 125. You got Malcolm Gordon fighting Dennis Bondar. Yeah, Bondar, sorry. So Malcolm Gordon's had 3 fights so far in the UFC. His record's 13-5, with currently on a 1-fight win streak. His first 2 fights in the UFC, he lost both in the first round, but he fought pretty tough guys that have just are on win streaks. So his last fight was against Francisco Figueiredo, who's Davison Figueiredo's older brother, actually. So he beat Francisco by decision. So he's had 3 fights in the UFC. Now the guy he's fighting, Dennis Bondar, he's got a really good record. He's got a much better record, but it's 16-3 his record. But he's making his UFC debut. He's currently on a 10-fight win streak. However, all the guys, I kind of looked up his record. I watched a highlight video on him. All the guys that he fought, they don't have crazy good records, any of them, except for there might be like 1 or 2 guys that have pretty decent records. So even though he's on a 10-fight win streak, Malcolm Gordon's on a 1-fight win streak. Malcolm Gordon's kind of fought the tougher competition on paper. At least that's what it looks like. So I'm going to have to go with Malcolm Gordon by decision in this fight. He was able to grind out his last win, so I think he can probably do the same to this Dennis Bondar guy. The Dennis Bondar guy looked pretty well-rounded, but like I said, the competition, it's hard to tell if you're not fighting good guys. So if you fight just guys that aren't that good, like I'm not saying they're not that good, but I just don't know for sure. The records didn't say that they were too good, so just based on that, I have to go with the guy who's fought the tougher guys, even if his record's not as good. So I'm going to go with Malcolm Gordon by decision. And then next is going to be a light heavyweight bout, 205 pounds. You got Gelatin Almeida versus Danilo Marquez. So Gelatin Almeida, he's making his debut. He fought on the Contender Series. He actually fought a really tough Russian guy who was really well known for his wrestling and his grappling. Obviously, the Russians are well known for that. Gelatin Almeida's from Brazil, and I believe the Russian was pretty heavy favorite in his Contender Series fight. So Gelatin Almeida's on a 10-fight win or a 9-fight win streak. His record's 14-2, and he's really good on the ground. Like his fight, he actually tapped out the Russian guy who was undefeated in that fight on Contender Series, and I think he does a lot of jiu-jitsu competition as well, so he actually has really good jiu-jitsu, and he was able to tap out the really good Russian wrestler, so I was actually really impressed, and he was an underdog in that fight as well. So he looked really good. He's fighting Danilo Marquez, who's 11-3 with currently on a 1-loss streak, but he's 2-1 in the UFC, so he won his first 2 fights, and then he just lost his last fight. From what I remember, he's really tall. He's like a 6'6", which is really tall, even for light heavyweight. Like it's still really long. He seemed like he was pretty game. I just remember a little bit of his fights. I don't remember too much about him. But the Gelatin Almeida guy, I think he's going to be able to probably get him to the ground and win by submission. So I'm going to pick Gelatin Almeida by submission for that one. And then I'm going on to the only female fight of the card. It's actually women's bantamweight, so 135-pound division. You got Lexus Davis versus Julius Dolerenko. So Alexis Davis is 20 wins, 11 losses, and she's on a 1-fight loss streak. So all of her losses, like as of late, like I'm pretty sure mostly throughout her career, except for like the exception of her loss to Ronda Rousey, she mostly loses by decision. So she's super tough and durable. She's a Canadian fighter as well. So she's actually, I think, originally from Port Colborne, which is pretty local. So she's 20-11, so she's super experienced. She's fighting Julius Dolerenko, who I believe is She's some sort of Europe somewhere. I'm not sure exactly, but she fought in one of the Ultimate Fighter seasons at featherweight. I seen her trying to cut weight to bantamweight for one of her fights, and she was like struggling. She could barely step on the scale. She almost fainted on the scale and everything. She's 9-6 her record, but she's fought pretty decent girls. She seemed like more of a grappler, from what I remember. Alexis Davis is pretty well rounded, and Julius Dolerenko is also on a 2-fight losing streak. So they're both coming off like a couple losses. But Alexis Davis, I think, is just a little more experienced, a little more well-rounded. She's been in the game for a long time, so just for that reason alone. This Julia Dolerenko girl is really tough, though, so I'm going to pick Alexis Davis by decision. Okay, so then on to welterweights, 170. We have Jason Witt versus Philip Rowe. So Jason Witt's 19-7. Currently on a 1-fight win streak, and Philip Rowe is 8-3, currently on a 1-fight win streak. I'm not too familiar with either guy, to be honest. I just looked at their records, seen who they've fought. They've each had a couple fights, I think, in the UFC so far. This one was a hard one for me to pick based on who they fought and who they beat in the UFC. But I think it's going to be kind of competitive, so I picked Jason Witt by decision for this one. Okay, so then on to the middleweight division, 185 pounds. You have Chitty Connie versus Marc-Andre Barrio. So Marc-Andre Barrio, another Canadian guy. So Chitty Connie is 20 wins, 7 losses, and he's currently on a 2-fight win streak. He's making his UFC debut. He's fought in Bellator before. He lost 2 fights in Bellator. Then I'm not sure if he got cut or if he just signed a contract. Then I think he won 1 fight in LFA, and then he won a fight on Contender Series, I believe. So, and he won his fight on Contender Series. Marc-Andre Barrio, he's 13 wins, 4 losses, 1 no contest. He's currently on a 2-fight win streak. He's had at least 5 fights now in the UFC. He used to fight for TKO. He was the middleweight champion, I believe, and the light heavyweight champion of TKO. And he's a gamer. Like, he's always tough. His 3 losses, I think he had 3 losses in the UFC, and he's maybe won 2 or 3. But he's on a 2-fight win streak, and his 3 losses were all to pretty tough guys, and they're all decisions. Like, I think a few might have even been split, so that's super close. Chitty Connie, I believe, I don't know too much about the guy, but I believe he's brothers with Anthony Connie, who's a striker. So I'm pretty sure it's a good striker. Marc-Andre Barrio is like a grinder. He's a striker as well, but he's pretty well-rounded. Just kind of overall good fighter. So I think it's going to be a tough fight. Wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, Marc-Andre Barrio is pretty durable. He's hard to finish, so I'm going to pick him to win by decision. I just think he's going to put a lot of pressure on Connie and probably get the decision. Okay, so then we're going to, this fight should be really good. This next one, it's a featherweight 145, Mike Trisano versus Hakeem Dawadu. So Hakeem Dawadu is another Canadian guy. There's actually 3 Canadian guys on this card, so that's quite a few actually. I usually don't see that. He is a featherweight. He's 12 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw. He's currently on a 1-loss streak. He's fighting Mike Trisano, who's 10-1. Both guys are gamers. Pretty sure their losses are only to gamers, right? So they're both strikers mainly. Hakeem Dawadu has really nice striking. Mike Trisano comes from Tiger Schulman's, who is all their fighters from there are really good strikers. It's more of a karate style of striking, but they're all really good. But Hakeem Dawadu is really crisp, and his 1 loss was to somebody who was a beast. I can't recall who it is right now, but I'm going to pick Hakeem Dawadu by decision. I think it's going to be a really close fight, but I see him getting it done. So on to the final fight of the prelims. We got bantamweights 135, Miles Johns versus John Castaneda. So Miles John just came off of a huge knockout win. It was gorgeous, nice liver shot to the body, followed by an overhand right. Off of a slip, he slipped across, liver shot, overhand right. It was beautiful. Like it was money. It's just like he didn't wait at all. As soon as he slipped, he was already throwing the liver shot, and then came over the top and knocked the guy right out in the third round, I believe, which was always exciting. Kind of third round, you're kind of expecting it maybe to go to the decision at that point, but he ended up getting a finish, and it was really nice. Especially coming from like a wrestling background, you're not really expecting it as much. So he's fighting John Castaneda. He's 18 wins, 5 losses, so he's definitely the more experienced fighter with over 20 fights. He's currently on a 1-fight win streak. I believe he's had 4 fights in the UFC. I think like 1 win or 1 loss, 1 win, 1 loss, and then 1 win. But I think he's going to be a little more experienced. It's going to be I could see it going either way, but I think I'm going to pick John Castaneda in that one. Okay, so then we're on to the main card. And this card, actually, I'm just going to mention quick. It starts earlier than the cards, like the pay-per-view cards. Prelims, and the whole thing is prelims are usually on Fight Pass for the first few, and then TSN. So it's all, if you have, like, you're not paying pay-per-view for this card, so it's always a good thing. But the prelims are at 4, and the main card's at 7. So it's also kind of a little earlier, which is a nice time for a card, I think. Okay, so the first fight on the main card, this fight will be a really good one. It's featherweight 145. You got Julian Arosa versus Steven Peterson. So both guys have fought really tough guys in the UFC. Julian Arosa, 26 wins, 10 losses. He's currently on a 1-fight win streak. Steven Peterson is 19 wins and 9 losses and 2 wins. So they've had a lot of fights. Like, that's a lot of fights for an MMA fighter. So they both have a lot of experience. Steven Peterson's really tough and durable. Julian Arosa is very well-rounded, but he gets a lot of submission wins. However, Steven Peterson, the last guy he fought was Chase Hooper, who has a lot of submissions too. But he was able to beat him by decision. I just think that was kind of more of an experience thing, and Chase Hooper not really having the striking to hang with Steven Peterson. I think this will be a little different. Julian Arosa is kind of more well-rounded. He'll have some good striking. I could see it going to decision, but I don't want to pick all my fights by decision, so I'm going to say Julian Arosa is probably going to submit him in this one. But Steven Peterson's super tough and durable. I don't see it being an easy fight for Julian Arosa. Peterson's definitely the tougher, I would think, of the two, but Julian Arosa is probably the more technical. So we'll see how this fight goes, but I'm going to pick Arosa by submission. Okay, so the second fight on the main card is a middleweight fight, 185. It's Trisano Gore versus Bryan Battle. So this was actually this fight was already supposed to happen before. It was supposed to be the finale of the Ultimate Fighter from last year. So what happened was they both won 2 fights on the Ultimate Fighter, and then they were supposed to meet each other in the finale. But then Trisano Gore, I guess, I looked up the reason why they didn't fight on Tapology, and it showed Trisano Gore had a knee injury, I guess. So what happened was Bryan Battle ended up fighting the guy who Trisano Gore actually beat on the show, and Trisano Gore knocked out that guy in the second round. So then Bryan Battle fought that guy on the Ultimate Fighter finale, and Bryan Battle ended up submitting him in the second round, the same guy. So they both beat, I think it was Gilbert Urbina. Trisano Gore knocked him out in the second round, and Bryan Battle submitted him in the second round. So they both have a win over the same guy in different methods, right? So I'd say Trisano Gore is more of a striker. He's very green. Like, he only has 3 fights, three. So technically the 2 fights in the Ultimate Fighter, they're exhibitions because they're only 2-round fights, so they didn't count towards your record. But he's 3-0 other than that. So technically it's 5-0 total, but they only count 3-round fights. So the 2-round fights don't go on your record. So he's technically 3-0. He's currently on a 3-fight win streak, obviously, then, not counting the exhibition fights. And Brian Battle is 7-1, not counting his exhibition fights. And he's on a 5-fight win streak. And he actually, so he technically won the Ultimate Fighter because he was fighting the guy, kind of like the backup guy, because Trisano Gore couldn't fight. So it's kind of nice that they're rebooking this fight, because now you'll see who actually would have probably won the Ultimate Fighter, even though they're both going to be better now than when they would have fought then. But it's still good that they're remaking this fight. You kind of get a rough idea of maybe who would have won, right? I'm not saying for sure, but maybe. So for this fight, Brian Battle is a little more well-rounded, I think. He's pretty good in the clinch from what I remember watching on the show. Trisano Gore is more of like a striker, but I'm pretty sure like his whole game is to keep the fight on the feet and strike, which I love that style. It's a great way to fight, like just try to keep it on the feet and knock the guy out. But I think Brian Battle's kind of a grinder. I think it'll be a good fight, competitive. I could see it going either way, honestly. But I'm going to pick Brian Battle by decision. Okay, so then on to the next fight. We have Sam Alvey. So it's a middleweight division again. Sam Alvey versus Phil Hawes. So Sam Alvey is 33 wins, 16 losses, 1 draw, 1 no contest. So he's had over 50 fights. That's 51 fights, right? So he's a UFC vet. Like, he's been fighting forever in the UFC now. Always super positive guy. They call him Smiling Sam Alvey for a reason. He's always smiling, but just super nice guy, family guy. But he gets a lot of knockouts, and not the typical guy who you would expect to be a fighter, just based on his build and everything. And it'll be interesting to see him fight. But he's currently on a 6-fight losing streak, so there's some fights that were like close decisions. Some he got finished. They're putting him against like he only gets tough fights. He doesn't get easy fights. So with that being said, like, he's on a 6-fight losing streak. Usually they cut people after a few fights. I'm surprised he still has another fight. I'm thinking it's just maybe because of his following, or like because people like him. He's just super positive. I don't know. Usually six fights, and usually are cut. It must be because he's a veteran, and people like watching him fight, I guess, right? So he kind of lulls people in. He's not very aggressive. He kind of is very more of a counter puncher, but he's got like a really nice hook that he throws, and it just knocks people out. So he'll like bait people in and be very calm, and then out of nowhere explode and knock people out with his hands. He's surprising, has some surprising power considering his build. Like, you wouldn't expect it. So the guy he's fighting, Phil Hawes, he's more of like a UFC newcomer. He's had a few fights now in the UFC. He's currently on a 1 fight loss streak. He's 11-3. So he is like the complete opposite build of Sam Alvey. He is like a specimen. He's like a juggernaut. He's just jacked. And I think even though Sam Alvey's on a 6-fight losing streak, it's hard for me to pick this because he is on a 6-fight losing streak. But I look at the guys that he's lost to. I feel like that might be his motivation. He might know, like, if I lose this fight, this might be my last one. He might get cut. Like, I'm surprised. Like I said, 6-fight losing streak. They must really like him. I was kind of surprised when I looked it up. I didn't think he lost that many in a row. But I think that's going to be extra motivation for him. Phil Hawes is currently on a 1-fight loss streak. I have a feeling he's going to try and use his size to push him against the cage a lot, make it a kind of like a grinding fight, because you don't want to be out in the open just striking with Sam Alvey, because if he does hit you, he can knock you out. Like, he does have that knockout power. But I'm going to pick Sam Alvey by KO for this one, just because like, I think he's going to be hungry for it with the 6 losses. It's either that, or I'm completely wrong, he's going to lose, and he might like be nearing the end of his career, right? So I'm hoping he proves me wrong, because I like the guy. So hopefully he wins by KO. So then we're on to welterweights, 170. This fight I'm super excited about too. So you got Shavkat Rakimov versus Carlston Harris. So Shavkat Rakimov, firstly, I want to talk about him. He's 14 wins, 0 losses. He's currently on a 2-fight win streak in the UFC, but he's never lost his whole career. He's from Uzbekistan, which is like a country I'd never hear of fighters being from, but he is like an absolute killer. Both of his fights, I don't know his first fight who he beat. I'm pretty sure, but his second fight, he beat Michel Prazeres, who's like a UFC veteran. He's been around for a long time. And he's an older Brazilian guy, Michel Prazeres, but he's like, his record was like 26-3. He's fought in UFC probably for the last 5 or 10 years. So to have a record like that when you're fighting in the UFC, especially at his age, is really impressive. So this guy came in and he actually submitted Michel Prazeres. Most people, anytime Michel Prazeres usually loses, it's usually by decision, and he very rarely even loses in the first place. So that's where this guy kind of got my attention when he fought Michel Prazeres, and he submitted him in the second round. I was really shocked, actually. So that's how I knew this guy was somebody to be watched. Carlston Harris, I don't know much about. He's 17-4 though, his record. There's probably a reason why they're putting him against this guy. These are two probably really good fighters that they want to see who's gonna come out on top. And he's on a 5-fight win streak. So one thing I did look at was like his record, and he had a lot of mix of like, he seemed like he had a lot of finishes. So I don't see this fight going to decision. I see somebody getting a finish. They both seem like they go for the kill. I think it'll be an exciting fight for that reason. But I'm going to pick Shavkat Rakimov by KO. Just because, like, I've seen him, like I said, he finished Michel Prazeres, and most people won't do that. So I have a feeling he's going to get a knockout or a submission. But I don't think that Carlston Harris guy ever lost. Or I think he's lost by decisions and by submission. So I'm going to pick KO for Shavkat. Okay, so then we're on to the co-main event. So middleweights, 185 pounds. So these guys are both up-and-comers. One guy has had one fight in the UFC so far, and then the other guy has had a few fights so far in the UFC. So we got Punah Soriano versus Nick Maximov. Punah Soriano, he's 8-1 with 1 loss, currently on a 1-fight losing streak. Now his loss was to Brendan Allen, who is he's like on a tear right now. He's I think he's maybe lost 1 fight in the UFC. He's probably won 4 or 5. So he's a gamer. He's very well rounded, that Brendan Allen guy. Punah Soriano, this guy has crazy knockout power. He goes for the kill, and I think that was a big part of his fight with Brendan Allen. Brendan Allen fought him really smart, and he tried to avoid a lot of those big bombs, and he taxed him to the body a lot with the liver kick. So that was a really good fight, and it was a good test for Soriano, but ultimately he lost the decision in that fight. But I think that was really good for his experience. And he's fighting Nick Maximov, who's 7-0, and he's on a 7-fight win streak, obviously. He's actually one of Nate Diaz's guys, so trains at the Nick Diaz Academy. He's had 1 fight so far in the UFC. I watched this fight. He's like, you can tell he kind of likes to wrestle, but he has his hands up high like the Diaz's. He was getting caught a couple times with his hands down, so this one was a hard one for me to pick. Like Punah Soriano, he throws bombs, and like if he lands one, good chance you're probably going to get knocked out. So I would say he's probably the more dangerous striker, but Nick Maximov is more well-rounded, I think, personally, mixing up the striking with the takedowns. But this one was really hard for me to pick. I almost want to, if I was going to pick Punah Soriano, I feel like he'll probably knock him out. if I pick Nick Maximov, he'll probably win a decision. So I went with Nick Maximov by decision. But I could see it going either way. So then we're on to the main event. So this will be a good fight as well. It's kind of different styles of fighters. So we got Jack Hermanson in the middleweight division, 185 pounds, versus Sean Strickland. Jack Hermanson's currently on a 1-fight win streak. Sean Strickland's currently on a 5-fight win streak. Jack Hermanson's record is 22 wins, 6 losses. And Sean Strickland's record is 24 wins with 3 losses. So Jack Hermanson is pretty well-rounded, but I wouldn't say he's like known for striking necessarily or like knocking people out. He's more known for using his striking to get the fight to the ground and pounding, trying to win by decision, and just like grinding people out. And he's got amazing cardio as well. Like he can go 5 rounds, no problem. He's done it a few times. I'd say he's definitely fought the tougher people, especially lately. Before his last win, he lost to Marvin Vettori, I think, by like a 5-round decision. So, and Marvin Vettori's a savage. Like, he just fought Adesanya, and he was able to beat everybody up to that point of fighting Adesanya. So then Sean Strickland, his style, I'd say, is more of a striker. Like, he likes to try and knock people out, just box people up with his hands. He's definitely not afraid to fight. You can tell he really embraces the striking battle. So Jack Hermanson, I think his game plan's got to be to get this fight to the ground if he wants to win. If he wins, that's how it's going to be. But I don't think Sean Strickland's going to necessarily just let him take him down. He's going to have to be crafty and really set up his takedowns with his striking to get it there. But Sean Strickland's pretty good at striking. So most of the time the fight starts on the feet and the guy has to be able to get you to the ground. I feel like Sean Strickland will probably be able to stop his takedowns and just box him up for 5 rounds. Sean Strickland wins a lot of fights by decision. He can get knockouts, but he'll tap people up, like constantly be in your face, just hitting you with nice punches. So I see Sean Strickland winning by decision for this one. Okay, it should be a good night of fights, guys. So February 5th, Saturday night, 4 p.m., prelims, and then main card at 7. Hope you guys enjoyed the fights, enjoyed the video, breakdowns of the fights, my predictions. If you want to give me a comment, like, share it, subscribe, that'd be great. I appreciate everything, guys. Appreciate you guys watching my videos and taking the time. And have a great day.